Today we'll be talking about the 6 pathways for ECFMG certification. We'll go over the requirements for ECFMG certification, who's eligible to apply, and go in detail into the 6 pathways for ECFMG certification. So let's get started. Let's get started here with the ECFMG websites, requirements for ECFMG certification for 2023 match. And I want to show you all the information from the actual website. Let's go to the overview, which will give us an idea about the requirements for ECFMG certification. So here it says to be eligible for ECFMG certification, IMGs must satisfy a number of requirements: the medical examination, clinical skills, and communication skills. So step 1 and step 2 CK are the medical examination requirements. So you need your step 1 and step 2 CK to be able to apply to the pathway to become ECFMG certified. For the clinical skills, that is represented by the pathways that we'll be talking about. And for the communication skills, you need the OET exam. Who should use the pathways? IMGs who are currently not ECFMG certified, who have completed both step 1 and step 2 CK and wish to become ECFMG certified. So if you're already ECFMG certified, you don't need the pathways. If you pass the USMLE Step 2 CS exam, which is currently cancelled, you don't need to apply to any of the pathways, because the CS exam will satisfy the clinical and communication skill requirement for the ECFMG certification. So who does not need to apply for one of these pathways that we'll be talking about? IMGs who passed the Step 2 CS already before it got cancelled, IMGs who are currently certified and hold a valid ECFMG certificate, IMGs with an approved application to the 2021 or 2022 pathways. Because the ECFMG in 2021 and 2022 opened these pathways but only gave the ECFMG certificate for a validity of 1 year. And they wanted the applicants to go into residency for 1 year to make that certificate, the ECFMG certificate, not expire. So those who applied for the ECFMG certificate in 2021 or 2022 only got their certificate valid for 1 year. And if they didn't match into residency, that certificate expires. But here they're telling you that if you apply to the pathway and you were approved, even if your certificate expired, they extended it for you for the match of 2023. Let's have a quick look here at the important information for 2021 and 2022 pathway applicants. If you submitted an application to one of the pathways in 2021 or 2022 match and your application was approved and you wanted to apply for the 2023 match, you are not required to reapply to the pathways. Your previously accepted pathway application will remain valid for 2023, and the expiration date, which is in 2021 or 2022, will automatically be extended to December 31st of 2024. Here is the point I was talking about. Once you successfully complete the first year of an accredited US GME program, GME means Graduate Medical Education, which is the residency, your certificate is no longer subject to expiration. So in order to make your ECFMG certificate is valid forever without an expiration date, you need to enter and complete 1 year of residency training. But if you already applied to the pathway and the certificate already expired, that is fine. They're telling you for the match of 2023, you're fine. You can use the approved application even if it expired, because it will automatically renew. The question that some of you might be asking is, well, I applied for the pathway in 2021, 2022 or 2023, and now I'm applying for match 2024 because I didn't match. So what happens with me? The answer to this question is not clear yet. So we have to wait until the ECFMG releases some information to either automatically renew the pathways like they did for the previous matches, or they might ask you to apply again or do a different thing. So we have to wait from ECFMG to see what they want to do with those who had an approved application and did not match and their ECFMG certificate expired. Now let's move on to the assessment of communication skills. As I said, that is covered under the OET exam, and I'll make a detailed video on the OET exam. But to be able to apply for the pathways and get the ECFMG certificate, you need step 1, step 2 CK and the OET exam. And now let's go over the pathways. Here there is an important note. Applicants who failed the step 2 CS 1 or more times must apply to pathway 6. There are 6 pathways and we'll go into each of them one by one. But they're telling you if you failed step 2 CS exam 1 or more times without passing it, you need to go directly to pathway 6, regardless of whether you meet the eligibility requirements for the other pathways. So even if you meet the requirement for pathway 1 but you failed the Step 2 CS exam one or more times without passing it, you have to go directly to pathway 6. But keep in mind, if you pass the Step 2 CS exam, you don't have to apply for the pathways. So let's say you failed it 2 times and then in the 3rd time you passed, you don't have to do any of the pathways, you just apply for the ECFMG certificate. But if you failed it 1 time, but you didn't have the chance to take it again because the exam get cancelled, here you go and apply to pathway 6 directly. And this is here, it says, as a reminder, applicants who have a passing performance on the Step 2 CS that is valid for ECFMG certification, and we'll talk about the idea of the exam being valid or not at the end, do not need and are not eligible to apply for a pathway, even if they previously failed Step 2 CS. So now let's talk about Pathway 1. Already licensed to practice medicine in another country. Pathway 1 is for applicants who currently hold or have recently held a license to practice medicine without supervision. So you have to be careful here. The license that you should be holding is without supervision. Applicants who meet the eligibility requirement for Pathway 1 must apply to Pathway 1 in order to meet the requirements for the ECFMG certificate. So even if you meet the requirement for Pathway 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, but you meet the requirement for Pathway 1, you have to apply to Pathway 1. You can't apply to Pathway 2. So if you have a license to practice medicine in your country without supervision, you have to apply to Pathway 1. Let's read a few information about Pathway 1. So if you click on the link here, you can get more information about Pathway 1 that I want to make sure that you understand. So the license that you should be holding should be active anytime on or after January 1st of 2018. This is explained more here, the idea about the date. The license registration does not need to be currently valid. So you don't have to have a valid license. It just has to be active on or after January 1st of 2018. So let's say you had the license on February 8th of 2019 and you held that license for a year and now it's expired and you're applying to the match. That is fine. Even though the license is not currently valid, it was valid on or after January 1st of 2018 and that satisfies that requirement. Here they're talking about the idea of unsupervised license. Individuals who have held only a license that requires supervised practice, such as a training license, are not eligible for a pathway. Again, it must be without supervision. And there are a lot of more information here that you can go through, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'll leave all the links for you in the description below. And now let's go to Pathway 2. Pathway 2 already passed an objective structured clinical examination, or OSCE, for medical licensure administered by an acceptable medical school. To make it easier for you to understand, I'm gonna clump Pathway 2, 3, 4 and 5 together. Because to be eligible for any of these pathways, you have to be from certain medical schools. For Pathway 2, it says OSCE by an acceptable medical school. For Pathway 3, you have to be recognized by the WFME. For Pathway 4, by the ECFMG. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of letters. For Pathway 5, the LCME. So how can you figure out which schools are these? You can go here to Pathway 3, 4, 5 and you will see a list of these schools here. Medical schools eligible for 2023 pathways, and you can click on that and you can see the list of all these schools. So you can Control F the name of your medical school and find if it's here or not. So now if you have a license to practice medicine in any country without supervision, you go and apply to Pathway 1. If you're from any of these medical schools on this list that I showed you, you apply to either 2, 3, 4 or 5. If you don't satisfy any of these criteria or you have failed Step 2 CS without passing it, you go and apply to Pathway 6. And this is summarized here. Pathway 6 is for applicants who don't meet the eligibility requirements for Pathways 1 to 5. To meet the requirement for Pathway 6, the applicant's clinical skills must be evaluated by licensed physicians using the ECFMG mini clinical evaluation exercise for Pathway 6. So Pathway 6 is kind of similar to Step 2 CS, however it's administered by a physician, not by the USMLE. Let's read a little bit more information about Pathway 6 by clicking on this link. Pathway 6 evaluation of clinical patient encounters by licensed physicians. We talked about who should apply. Let's talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements, because it's kind of interesting how they wanted you to be evaluated by a physician. So they want your clinical skills to be observed and evaluated by licensed physicians in 6 real in-person, not virtual, clinical encounters using this format. There are criteria for acceptable physician evaluators, and each encounter must meet also the acceptable criteria for the encounter. They're telling you that each individual physician should not evaluate more than 2 of the applicant's 6 encounters. So since you have 6 encounters, each physician that you're choosing should not evaluate more than 2 cases. So if you picked 3 physicians, each of them can evaluate 2 cases for you, so that's a total of 6. You can also choose 6 physicians, each of them can evaluate 1 case, but of course it's harder to find 6 physicians to evaluate your cases. Let's have a quick look at the criteria for acceptable physician evaluators. They have to agree to directly observe you, of course, currently hold a full unrestricted license to practice medicine without supervision, and have held a full unrestricted license to practice medicine without supervision for a minimum of 5 years. So if you find a new physician who've been just practicing for 1 year and they only have held a license without supervision for 1 year, that would not work. They should have at least held the license for 5 years. They should not be your relatives, and they define relatives here: spouse, child, grandchild, parent, grandparent, sibling, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, and or cousin. And they should not be compensated by you or any third party to perform this evaluation, which actually is challenging. So they're not asking you to find evaluators necessarily in the US. You can find evaluators anywhere in the world if they meet these requirements. But you understand that it might be challenging to find a physician who has at least held the license for 5 years, who is not your relatives and is not gonna get compensated for their work. So they're literally doing this just as a favor for you to help you. And you need to find at least 3 physicians who would do that for you and do all the paperwork that ECFMG wants from them. Another interesting thing is that each physician should not evaluate more than 10 applicants for the 2023 match. So if you find a nice doctor who agreed to evaluate students, you can't tell all your friends about that doctor because they can't evaluate more than 10 students for the 2023 match. Here are some information regarding the acceptable clinical encounters. They have to be real and in person, not virtual or telemedicine. They have to be in a formal clinical setting. They have to be primary general medicine rather than subspecialization. And if you go here to the ECFMG Mini CEX for Pathway 6 and scroll down to the PDF version, you can have a template of how this looks like. So if you scroll down here, this is a similar scoring sheet for the mini clinical evaluation exercise. So you can see here there is medical interviewing skills, physical examination skills, professionalism and communication, clinical reasoning and judgment, and there is a score from 1 to 9. We already talked about the information on expiration of the ECFMG certificate. As I said, you have to enter into a residency training for at least 1 year to make your ECFMG not expire. So if you get your certificate this year, it's valid only until December 31st of 2024. So technically you can't use it for the match of 2024 unless the ECFMG says this year that we're doing the auto extension like they did for previous matches, and you can use the same application you did for the last match for this coming match. I wanted to end with a quick note on the time limit for completing the examination, and this is a question I get asked about a lot. This here says the ECFMG requires that IMGs satisfy the examination requirements for the ECFMG certificate within a 7-year period, which means you need to complete all your USMLE examination, the step 1, step 2 CK, and also complete the OET and apply for the pathway within a 7-year period. This 7-year period begins on the date of the first exam pass and ends exactly 7 years from that date. This is another very important and dangerous note actually. It says meeting the clinical and communication skills requirements for ECFMG certification through the pathways is also subject to this 7-year requirement, which means if you pass step 1, step 2 CK, but you didn't apply to a pathway or you failed to meet one of the pathways and more than 7 years passed from the first date of your step 1 exam, your step 1 and step 2 CK are not valid anymore. And you can see that here. This means that your pathways application must be accepted within the 7-year period. If your pathways application is not accepted within the 7-year period and you have a passing score on step 1 and step 2 CK, that becomes invalid for the ECFMG certificate as a result. However, here they're giving you a possible exception. You must contact ECFMG to determine whether your invalid passing score on step 1 and step 2 CK meets the requirement to be extended. So they're telling you if, for example, you passed step 1 on January 1st of 2015 and then you passed Step 2 CK on January 1st of 2016. That's within 1 year period, so that's great. But now 7 years passed, we're in 2023, and more than 7 years passed and you did not get your ECFMG certificate. You didn't apply for a pathway, so you did not pass one of these requirements. So that means more than 7 years passed from the time of your Step 1 and you didn't pass one of the pathways. That means your Step 1 and Step 2 CK are invalid. So they're telling you, if that happens to you, reach out to them and they might extend the eligibility for your Step 1 and Step 2 CK. That is very dangerous because you spent probably years studying for Step 1 and Step 2 CK, and now if you didn't apply to one of the pathways, your Step 1 and Step 2 CK are gone. Here they're telling you that it's your responsibility to check the progress and these 7-year time, because they're not gonna send you information or deadlines that you need to pass the pathway tomorrow, otherwise you'll lose your Step 1. So it's your responsibility to check the 7-year requirement. I want to emphasize that point because it's actually very important. If you pass any of the USMLE exams, Step 1 or Step 2 CK, the 7-year clock starts, which means you have to continue passing the other exam. So if you pass Step 1, you have to pass Step 2 CK, pass the OAT exam, apply for one of the pathways and get the pathway accepted. Otherwise, you would lose your exams. I hope this video provided you with the information you're looking for to learn about the different pathways for ECFMG certification. If I missed anything, make sure to drop it in the comment below and I'll make an updated video once we have more updated information from the ECFMG regarding the 2024 match. If you have any questions about any of these pathways or you need help one-on-one to figure out what is the best pathway for you, don't hesitate to reach out to our residency advising services, and I'll leave the link for that in the description below. Also, one bonus for those watching this video, free access to our USMLE journey course, and I'll leave the link for that in the description below. This course covers everything you need to know about the process, from the USMLE exams to the US clinical experience, research, and the match process. If you find any value in this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you get notified whenever I post future videos on my YouTube channel. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and see you in future videos. Peace.